Okay, so not like that angle. I guess this is better. Today I'm going to be recommending you guys some books. So I really love book recommendations on my channel. I don't do them a lot though. So I wanted to recommend some books that are easy to transition. Like this is kind of a series I want to start. I read a lot of I read a lot of different genres. So I wanted to just start like recommending like how to transition from one genre to another because I know a lot of people want to try out other genres. So yeah, these are books that are easy to transition from like contemporary to fantasy. So I picked a lot of like simple to read fantasy, even though fantasy isn't hard to read. The first book that I want to recommend is Caraval by Stephanie Gerber. This book is about it's about two sisters, obviously the sisters. So there's this carnival that comes, and you can only go if you get invited. And so the older sister is riding to the place because she wants to be invited because her sister like really wants to go and she knows how important it is to her sister. So she's been writing for a long time, and one day they finally do get an invitation and they go, and it's not what it seems. And I just feel like this was a very easy book to read. Like, I was enjoyable. I personally didn't love it all that much. I didn't think it was like amazing, but I know a lot of people really did enjoy it. And I think that if you're trying to transition from contemporary to fantasy, this would be a really good book to read, and you will probably really enjoy it a lot. The next book I want to recommend is Sorcery of Thorns, which I loved. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. I actually plan on rereading this in March. And this book is about a girl who lives in a library, and the library books like they have personalities. Like they, react and all this stuff. And then if you don't like say you don't brush them every night, like they'll like turn into like they won't open up for you if you ask them to. Like they have personalities. And she ends up getting framed for a murder that happens, and somewhere along she meets Nathaniel Thorne. This is by Margaret Rogerson, who, if you've seen my fairy recommendations video, I recommend it in Enchantment of Ravens. And I also wanted to recommend Enchantment of Ravens in this video, but one thing about my recommendations is that I don't want to be recommending a book multiple times on my channel. I noticed that when I watch some people's recommendations, like I would watch all of their recommendations and they kind of recommend the same books, and then it's like I kind of want something new, so I really want to make sure I don't recommend the same books in case people happen to like watch my other videos. So I will suggest Sorcery of Thorns, but if you like Sorcery of Thorns, I do want to suggest Enchantment of Ravens. It is a pretty easy fantasy to get into. Also, if you come from like reading romance, then you would like Enchantment of Ravens because it is very like romance filled. Whereas this one, it isn't like romance heavy. It focuses a lot on the plot, and the romance like is a really good mixture. And I picked a lot of these books is because they focus a lot on like romance and fantasy, and not just like one or the other. And it's like either a pretty good mixture or like romance more. The next book I want to recommend is Children of Flesh and Bone. This book is hot. Um, this bookshelf is by a heating vent, and so a lot of my books on this shelf, especially down at the bottom, are like very hot. But I sprayed the edges of this book. I loved this book when I first read it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The cover is absolutely stunning. I haven't gotten to the second book yet, mainly because a lot of people either like love it or hate it, and I'm just scared that I'm not gonna like love it as much. So I'm just taking my time to get to it. But Children of Blood and Bone is about a fantasy world, and this is based off, I forget if it's like African mythology, but they are black characters, and this follows a girl who goes on an adventure to try to get magic back for her people because it was stolen from her. And it's just like an adventurous book, and I really loved it. It was like very well written. The romance is kind of like meh. I will say, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I don't care about the romance, but I love the characters, and I love how strong it was written, and I love that it was written about, you know, black people because we don't have enough of those books. So obviously I wanted to make sure I recommend that in one of my recommendation videos. The next book I have is The Cruel Prince, which if you didn't think that I wasn't gonna recommend this, then you are don't watch my channel. And so basically, I did recommend this in a fairy recommendations video, so I am contradicting myself, and I probably will recommend this in another recommendations video because I cannot recommend this book enough. This book is about fairies, and it takes place with the main character named Jude, and her parents were killed right before her eyes, and the person who killed them like kidnaps them and take them into fairyland, and it's just like her having to like deal with like being with the fairies and them hating her because she's a human and her hating them because they're mean to her, and she wants to like she wants to like not rule it, but she wants to be like a knight basically. And a lot of stuff happens in this book, and it doesn't go the way you think it will. Like, you think you know the plot, you think that you know where this book will go, and it does not go that way. And this is the Barnes and Noble edition that I sprayed the edges black of, by the way. And then I want to recommend the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I know you probably guys are probably like, what? This book isn't fantasy. This is urban fantasy, which is a genre of fantasy. But I thought that this would be really easy to get into because it's urban fantasy. The Cruel Prince is also urban fantasy. That's why I suggest this, because it's like it takes place in the real world, but also like a fairyland. So it'll be really easy to get into because you'll see like real world aspects of it. And the same with City of Bones. Like this place, the Cruel Prince kind of takes more place in the fairy world, whereas this one takes more place in the real world. And it does have their own Shadowhunter world, but I feel like this would be easy to get into because of that. And it has like a lot of romance in it. So if you love romance, like you will like this book. The first six books, well, the six books in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, the Mortal Instruments, are like meh. The last book is like amazing. The Inferno Devices, I personally didn't like the Inferno Devices, but a lot of people loved it. So that, and my favorite is the Dark Artifices, which you have to read like 8 books to get to that. So yeah, but it's a fun series to read. Like I read it all in 1 month, so it's like really quick to get into. Like I swear, once you pick the books up, they're hard to put down. They're hard to not finish. Like everyone was asking me how I was finishing the series so fast. Look at the words on the pages. Like, do you see how big these words are? Like, it's it's really hard not to finish these books fast, but they're like really fun and easy to get through. And I feel like if you want to get into fantasy, this would be a good start if you haven't already read it. The Shadowhunter Chronicles is about these people who are half angel, half human, and they basically are like set to like fight demons. And so each story you get a different like set of characters, obviously. So the Mortal Instrument series, which follows like City of Bones, City of Ashes, City of Glass, City of Heavenly Fire, like all of those City of books. Like those are all the Mortal Instrument books, and those follow Clary and Jace. And Clary, like she's new to the Shadowhunter world, so obviously I would suggest starting with the first 3 books in the TMI series. I suggest reading in publication order because that's what I did, and I gained a lot from it with no spoilers. This is a Curse So Dark and Lonely, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I'm absolutely sick of Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I hope that we leave them in 2019. I haven't heard of any coming out in 2020 or 2021, thankfully, yet. But I just really wish that we would stop. Like, there's so many Disney princesses you could write about, Disney characters, Peter Pan, The Little Mermaid, Snow White, like, and everyone only focuses on Beauty and the Beast. And I feel like it's because of the whole kidnapping thing. So it's like they have to be forced to be together, and like you have to love this person in order for them to like show who they really are, which is basically like this book literally is Beauty and the Beast, but like it's loosely at the same time, but it's literally Beauty and the Beast. I want to tell you guys, I have never seen Beauty and the Beast, and I can tell you the entire plot of Beauty and the Beast right now because of all the Beauty and the Beast retellings I've read. So this is like the girl, there's this guy and he's like cursed and he needs someone to fall in love with him. He lives in like this is also urban fantasy. Like this takes place in the real world and the fantasy world, which is why I recommended it. But yeah, it takes more so place in the real world in the beginning and then the fantasy world towards the end. But yeah, it's about this prince who is cursed and he's a beast and he's terrorizing the town at night. Prince is a beast and he has to like take these girls to like he takes these girls from the real world and like gets them to fall in love with them, but they always like run away or don't love him or whatever. And he's actually going to like take someone else, but the main character ends up like defending her because she doesn't know what's going on, and they end up like teleporting to the fantasy world, and she's stuck there because he can go there every like couple of days or couple of years or months, I don't know. And I really liked this when I first read it, but the more I sat and I thought about it, the more I realized how mediocre this book was. And I mean, a lot of people do love this book. It has great representation for cerebral palsy, and Angela from Blonde Books like loves this book. But I feel like once you really sit and think about it, it's like, what did I gain from this book? I do have the arc of the second book. The second book is already out, but I have the arc of it, and I want to read that before I buy it because these covers are beautiful. And my favorite character in this book is Gray. Like, he's one of my book boyfriends. Like, I love him so much. He's like the grumpy old like character, and The relationship in this series is like, man, whatever. I feel like I'm talking trash about this book, but I really liked it. Like, I gave it 5 stars when I first read it. I moved it down to 3.5, but it's a good book. It's not a bad book at all. But I feel like if you aren't like into fantasy, you're gonna love this book. Like, despite everything I'm saying, like if you aren't into fantasy, you're gonna like absolutely love this book. The final book that I want to recommend is Shadow and Bone, and I really want to recommend this because I feel like Six of Crows is a really good book to get into fantasy to read. But I noticed that like when people read Six of Crows before they read Shadow and Bone, they hate Shadow and Bone, and when people read Shadow and Bone before they read Six of Crows, they end up loving both. So I feel like you have a more chance of loving the entire series if you read this first, especially if you're new to fantasy. Like I've noticed people who are new to fantasy who read this who like eat this book up, like they love it. But this book is like before Six of Crows is set in the Grisha universe, and I feel like I read Six of Crows before I read Shadow and Bone. So when I went into it, I was like confused, but usually I don't care if I'm confused. Like I usually just keep pushing through, and I like end up not confused anymore, which is a bad idea because I still end up being confused. I feel like if I would have read this first, I would have had a. I didn't really love Six of Crows, honestly, and it could have been because I was new to BookTube and new to fantasy, but I didn't really love it, and so I feel like if I would have read this first and then that, I would have loved both. I mean, I love this book. I thought it was pretty good, and I read this after Six of Crows. It wasn't bad. I thought the writing was really good. The characters were interesting. It like made me feel like I hated characters, loved some characters. I love the Darkling. I'm obsessed with him. So it's like I gained a lot from this book personally, so that's why I enjoyed it. But the rest of the series was kind of like trash to me. But I feel like this will be a good book to read if you want to like get into fantasy. And this book's about this girl who's an orphan, and she basically discovers that she has powers. So she goes to the school for other people who kind of have powers, and there it's a lot that happens from there, and I kind of don't want to tell you more because it's not really a spoiler, but I feel like it's very good to go into books not really knowing everything's about. But yeah, that is it for this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next one.